Well, today I'm with Joanna Hutchins from Cowan. Joanna is the global CEO of Cowan, an independent international design agency expert in Asia, retail and consumer brands. Cowan was established in 1987, born in Australia, with 7 offices now across Australia, London, Southeast Asia, and of course, China. Joanna was recently awarded the Business Leader of the Year at this year's International Professional Women's Society Women Leadership Awards in Shanghai. And she's also been named one of China's top 50 marketing leaders by Internationalist Magazine and ANA, and globally one of the top 1,000 by the same organizations. Joanna, thanks so much for joining us. Where do we find you today in this crazy world?
Well, I happen, normally I'm based in China, but I happen to be in Singapore. I've been here for a few months. As many people know, China closed the border to residents, so I happen to be in Singapore in that moment and have been running our business from the Singapore location at this time.
Not a bad place to be. How has, COVID-19 impacted Cowan? How's the year been so far? We're almost halfway through. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, like most Australian businesses, we are on a fiscal year. So our financial year is coming to a close in June. So it really is a year of 2 halves for us to some degree. Like the first half of the year, which was June through December 2019, and the second half, which is now closing in June. And I would say, being based in China, and obviously the situation starting in China, our eyes were on that business, let's say January, February time. And it became quickly apparent that, to us in the world, that this was going to become a global issue and has become a global issue. And so it's affected our business differently in different places, and really as it relates to, because we have 7 offices around the world, from London to Sydney, and I would say that it's affected us very differently in different places. For example, in China, the business is booming.
Right.
We're actually having a better year this year than last year, which is highly unexpected because if you'd asked me in January what I thought was going to happen, it wasn't that. But what's happened is, because we work with consumer brand companies, they've really leaned into e-commerce digital platforms to move their brands. And so when I think about our competitors, so we work with companies like, Danone and Nestle, Unilever, P&G, companies like that. They've really, to some degree, adapted quite well because they have strong digital presence. Whereas I think about some of our competitors, other agencies that may work with airlines or hospitality, and that's been a completely different story for them, where they've seen massive budget cuts. But we've seen our clients accelerating, especially in markets like China, although I will say there's been softness in other markets. So in Australia and the UK, even a little bit in Southeast Asia, there has been some softness, but it's almost the opposite of what you would expect. China's growing, and the other things we're still remain to be seen how the rest of the calendar year is going to go.
You've got a really neat position, I think, being able to compare, different global markets, and obviously China went through this first, and I think the argument is that it's going to emerge from it first. But for your business, has the work changed? We talk so much about e-commerce in China and the rush to sort of digitalization in every sector. Has the type of brief that you've been given, or the type of, I suppose, output that clients are coming to you for, changed in the last 6 months?
There have been a few changes. One of the notable changes is accelerating of briefs. So for example, we work with a lot of our clients in long-term partnerships, and so we knew what was coming over the next 6, 8, 12 months in terms of type of work, kind of work. And what I've seen a lot of clients do is prepone. They're like, we want to get to market faster, because we believe that the consumer at this time, needs the novelty, they need the variety. So for example, we were working on some food and beverage products. And our clients wanted to bring a lot of those launches forward, to get them online and or in stores more quickly, because the places people are still going are supermarkets, and of course there's e-commerce in China. But so a lot of our food and beverage clients really wanted to move a lot faster is one key example. And then I would say we've had a big shift in terms of where they're spending money. So you know, we work with companies that also have retail presence, and their retail outlets have been shut. So they have their own branded retail and or you know pop-up events planned, launches planned, things like that. And they've had to move those really online. So a lot of our brand, let's say activation and brand design has really been around how to activate these launches, these products, these brands in the digital space, which is something that we've been doing for some time. But I would say, like in my business, I've seen the proportion shift. So in terms of briefs, you know, maybe we were, you know, half of the creative briefs that we would get would be in the space of let's say, pure packaging or brand design,
Right.
and the other half maybe communication, digital, you know, brand experience. But now it's more like 80% in that brand experience space, because that's where our clients realize that they need to be, because that's where the consumers are now. And then I'd say the third shift that I've seen happen in the type of briefs that we get is we have a lot of clients coming to us to wanting to talk about and prepare for what happens when lockdown's over.
Okay.
So they want to be ready with something fresh and interesting and exciting and appropriate for consumers when they can return to retail.
Right. So really, again, that's the same trend of accelerating out of COVID. Really, if you're accelerating into it, you want to accelerate on the other side of it as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a really good metaphor, because we've almost been talking about it like as a runway.
Okay.
Like building a runway to launch the brand in a different way after COVID.
And what about for yourself, Joanna? And I mean, it'd be remiss not to talk about leadership, given your recent gone with the folks at IPWS. I think we've heard a lot this year around just this being an accelerant for change. So whether that be adapting to, you know, Zoom and webinars and remote learning and virtual workplaces, you've probably gone through a process of changing your team or responding more quickly to briefs. What's that meant for you in your day-to-day work? How have you managed through it?
Right. I mean, we're a boutique business, so we're, I'd say, typically more agile than some of our competitors anyway, but we've had to increase that. And it really did catch us, like everybody else, a bit off guard. I mean, being based in China, this all started to come to a head during Chinese New Year holiday. So we were all far flung in different corners of the world and the management team, and trying to problem solve about how we were going to meet our briefs and work with clients. And I'd say that the first challenge that we, from a leadership point of view, is really mindset, frankly, because, you know, even in our leadership teams, it's interesting because this kind of hardship brings out different aspects of people's personality, right? And so, you know, what sort of work environments can tend to do is homogenize people to some degree around a common goal. You know, so everybody's focused on the goal and they kind of lean into the work culture. But one of the things that I noticed from a leadership point of view is this level of uncertainty and anxiety brought out a lot of personal reactions, and all of them are valid. And you know, so there's no such thing as a wrong way to react to difficult situation. And so, from a leadership point of view, I felt like it really tapped me and my leadership team to step up and become, I'd say, more flexible and creating situations that responded to our teams individually, rather than having sort of a blanket approach. So of course, yes, we did some blanket approaches, like, yes, we moved to virtual working, we moved to work from home. We moved onto Microsoft Teams, which I have to say, like, as a platform, I wasn't aware of it before. It's been really, really useful. And I know a lot of our clients are using it too. So that's been a really great tool for us. And those are all the kind of things that everybody talks about. But I think one of the things that people aren't talking about is the individual circumstances. You know, in Asia, people have multi-generational families in one home.
Yeah.
What does work from home look like in your house when you share it with like three grandparents and nieces and nephews and an extended family? And it was really helping people navigate through those personal situations. And no, there was no common solution. And that really took a lot of hands-on personal engagement, which I think as leaders of companies, maybe we're not as used to outside of our leadership team. You know, we might have, you know, depending on the size of our business, you know, a handful of people reporting into us. But, you know, in that moment, you have to lead everybody one by one. Yes. And deal with and help them face what they're dealing with and help them be effective. And so I think that was a particular challenge.
It's fascinating that I think, you know, it sort of reminds everybody that, you know, work isn't just work and everyone's got their own thing going on in the background. This has been, in some respects, a great opportunity to empathize and connect with, you know, colleagues and clients and whatnot, because we're all going through it, but differently together. Is there anything in that you think you'd keep in your business, or it will change the way that you run your teams, or you look for staff, or you know, onboard new clients? Are there sort of things that you want to keep, you know, in 2 or 20 years' time?
I mean, we're actually doing some work on that right now to think about it, because we know that there are learnings to be had, and we don't want to skip over them or miss them. So one of the things we're doing, so we have a global leadership team, which is made up of the heads of office of each of our 7 offices, as well as some of the other functional areas like finance and operations. And so we've pulled together that team to talk about what the future of work looks like for our business. I mean, I've read some articles and things about companies saying, oh, let's just downsize our real estate and save costs and things. And I think that's a very simplistic view. What we're going to do, what we are doing, is we're actually going to do a company's survey to really get to the heart of what working from home has been like for people, how they want to work, what flexibility we need to generate. Because we think, the thing is, we sat and talked about it, and we're like, well, we think we know what's going on, but we also know that, as you know, like me as the global CEO, or even the MDs of our various offices, people don't come to us always with all the little problems. And we don't want to take a top-down solution. We really want to craft it from the bottom up and really understand how people are feeling. So we're going to do a survey and define what the future of work looks like for us. But I can imagine we're going to, I mean, for example, we're going to be looking at things like, because we work in the creative industry, we work with a lot of files, a lot of confidential files. We have servers in every office. You know, dialing in remotely has been a challenge. So we're going to be looking at everything from like cloud-based services, but we have to come around to confidentiality and security of those for our clients, because we often work on things that aren't in the market, all the way down to flexible working arrangements and flex time, just something in our industry, I would say, is not common. A lot of what we do in our industry is really based on FaceTime with each other, brainstorming, creatively working together, FaceTime with clients, presenting, connecting. And we have to redefine how all that looks. So I can't tell you exactly what the outcome for our business is going to be, but we're trying to use this as an opportunity to redefine a new standard for what it means going forward, because we actually see that just very obviously there's some people who work from home works really well for, and some other people who it's not tenable. And so we have to design our organization to fit all those examples.
And in some respects, I think it's a good thought, process to go through. It's quite exciting to think about the structure of an organization, the engagement with teams, the idea that you can be just as connected with someone who's thousands of kilometers away as, you know, just down the road in your office or your suburb of where you're working from. Can we?
That's a really good point, actually. And, you know, we do, we do have these 7 offices in our network, and historically we've been trying to drive collaboration between the offices, which was really, you know, because we have some clients that are Pan-Asia clients, that, you know, we work with them in Australia, we work with them in Indonesia and Singapore and in China. And we have, with those clients, always been trying to drive more collaboration in the teams that service them. But I would say that there is always some hesitancy. You know, oh, it's difficult, the time zones, booking a call, catching up, I'll just send an email. And there was a lot of, I'd say, a lot of reasons why that couldn't happen as much as we wanted it to. But now, you know, people are working virtually with people that live on the same, you know, in Singapore, for example. I mean, I have calls with people who literally are on the same street as I'm living on because we can't meet in person. So this virtual working has forced a new appraisal of what it means to collaborate. And so we're actually seeing the collaboration between our offices become much more robust and increased. And those barriers have dropped. So I find it really, really fascinating about what that means for the potential, because now that we're forced to work virtually, you know, from even in one city, you know, from the east side of the city to the west side of the city, you know, it doesn't seem like such a big deal to work remotely collaboratively or virtually from say Sydney to Singapore. That seems much more possible today.
It's certainly possible today. It's just, I think, as you said earlier, it's a mindset shift for leaders and then everyone in teams and clients as well. Can I turn to clients and just a bit about, I suppose, crystal ball gazing? You mentioned that surprisingly China's looking pretty good for you this year, not something you would have expected back in January, and you're obviously closing June 30. For the clients that you're working with, this sort of big push to digital, obviously executing on e-commerce is very different to executing in a retail setting. What are you sort of seeing the back end to look like for both Cowan, but also some of your, you know, larger brands?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, having the vantage point that I've had across different markets, I see that China is flying mainly because of their history and commitment to digital transformation as a country, right? So, you know, the thing that always amazes me still about China is that you can order, you know, let's say a $3, you know, $3 cup of coffee and have it delivered, you know, to your office, to your desk in like 20 minutes.
I think I had one this morning. It took about 15, just a record for my.
So, I mean, that's kind of mind blowing because, you know, in a lot of other countries, there's like these minimum orders of, oh, well, if you spend $100, you can get free delivery and it's going to be maybe in a week or something. And so I think one of the interesting things that has helped China progress through this is this digital, the digital nature of the business, and in particular, not just the digital nature of things being available online, but that really cracking the logistics of last mile.
Yeah.
That's hugely important. And so being based in Singapore now, what I see with a lot of our clients, and I'm talking to them about lessons from China. So, you know, I'm working with a local Malaysian, Singaporean food and beverage clients in this market and saying, you know, here's some learnings. One of the things I've been talking to about with all clients is learnings from China. Like what can we take from China and how they have navigated this to bring to your brands in these countries. And what I'm hearing from all of my clients to some degree is, you know, we're all set up, but we haven't cracked the last mile. And that's what's really holding them back from being able to capitalize in this moment. And so when I look and see the clear difference between China and say other markets that we have the opportunity to work with, the brands that are winning, you know, and it's everything from, I mean, because we work with brands that sell, you know, we work with Unilever that sells laundry detergent. We work with, you know, P&G on some of the hand sanitizer brands, which obviously have done well. You know, we work with Danone on infant milk formula. You know, some of these brands have certainly, based on the category that they play in, seen an increase if they're in health and hygiene, absolutely.
Sure.
But there are other just daily staples, and you know, like the infant milk formula. If you have a child, you know, that's a daily staple that you need to buy. And one of the interesting things I've seen in Asia is there's been a lot of brand loyalty because of availability. Whereas when we work in the UK, so we have an office in London, and that's really changed because supply chain and logistics have meant that a lot of consumers haven't been able to get their preferred products, and they've moved to store brands. And what they found out when they've, and even in Australia we see that too, when they've moved to store brands, they perceive the consumers self-report saying, well, actually, I like this product just fine.
Wow.
I'm going to keep using it.
Wow.
So the knock-on effect will be an erosion of brand loyalty for those brands who can't make their products accessible. So accessibility, I'd say, is the key learning. And, in China, that has manifest in the form of e-commerce, last mile delivery, all of that. I mean, it might need to manifest differently in different markets based on the consumer level of adoption of digital shopping and e-commerce. But fundamentally, accessibility is the number one key takeaway from China that brands need to take forward in their markets.
Yeah, I mean, it seems as if global brands should get to China, research China, even if they don't want to be in China. There's so much to learn from China and then take it back to your home market.
I mean, that's the interesting thing. Like, I just finished finished doing some research. I'm actually preparing to write a book, and a lot of my research is around what the West can learn from China, and with regard to innovation. So I'm putting together lessons learned. I'm interviewing business executives from all different kinds of industries and putting together top lessons learned. And I think what's really interesting is people look at China and they think, well, the government drives all these, all these preferred situations for companies to thrive. Or, well, there's so many consumers and they have a captive market. And there's a lot of reasons to explain what's happening in China, which are down to, I would say, the China effect. But that's not really fair, actually, because when you look at what's happening, it's a really limited and myopic view, because when you look at really what's happening in China, they're actually taking quite a lot of business models and transforming them to, typical kind of Western business models, and transforming them to meet the needs of the market and to deal with lack of infrastructure, because they did have lack of infrastructure, to deal with lack of digital payment systems. So they've actually designed their systems around their lack, whereas I feel like a lot of Western and more developed, not just Western, but more developed countries are really tied into their infrastructure and their systems and trying to work within those rather than to deal with the gaps that they have in infrastructure or organizational structure. And so for me, one of the key lessons from China is like really looking carefully and not just glossing it over with, well, it's just different. There's a lot to be learned, and a lot that any country or any company can take forward as an insight for what they might do to transform their business.
Yeah, most definitely. You probably saw the piece in the last week or two from Shiseido in Japan, and mentioning obviously that the retail setting in Japan is quite, I suppose, a historical business model for an organization like that. And they said, we've got to learn from China. Our e-commerce business in China is booming. It's a very different utilization of KOLs, live streaming, many influencers across the country. What can we learn from there to bring back to Japan to change, our platform here, encourage online consumption, and then actually also lower overheads in terms of the retail setting?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was reading an article recently. It was more about I'm American, so I do naturally sort of stay plugged into the U.S. media as well. And I was reading an article about U.S. businesses and how they're so many of them, well, just frankly out of economic necessity, have had to reduce their retail footprint. And that could be a point at which you say, well, I think as a business, it could be a point at which you say, well, yeah, we've suffered and this is the impact of COVID. Or you could say, well, actually, no, we need to pivot our business
exactly
into a different way of operation, a different way of working. And let's just say we work with a lot of beauty clients as well. And, they're dealing with, so we work with J&J on Neutrogena and Dr. Silabo and Clarins, which is another beauty brand, which rely on things like, beauty advisors at counters and testers that are used with multiple people. And that's not going to be the way business going forward.
Unlikely.
I mean, so we're talking to J&J about what does it look like to sample a beauty product when you can't have a tester at retail.
Sure.
And so we're working with them on that, actually for the US market, and working on what it looks like, you know, for them going forward. So there's a lot of business challenges, and I think the ones that really get on top of it, and I think the key takeaway, like what I was saying, thinking like China thinks sometimes, is just not seeing them as constraints, but seeing them as opportunities. So how can we then now lead, redefine, and rescope how we engage with consumers, whether it's testing products or just making our products more available?
Mm. Well, Joanna, it's certainly going to be a big year. I'm sure we can chat again in a couple of months and see what the trends look like then. Hopefully we have you back to Shanghai pretty soon. Before we finish up, what's the biggest thing you miss from Shanghai? Food, restaurants?
Oh gosh, well, I mean, my partner and my family for sure.
Okay,
But,
that counts. Yep.
without that goes without
They'll
saying.
be happy you started with that. Yep.
Yeah. But honestly, like, it's funny because, staying in Singapore, there's a large Chinese community. And I realize when I'm like homesick, the first thing it is food. When the first thing I do, because we have a Din Tai Fung in Singapore, and Crystal Jade, and a lot of those amazing like dumpling and xiaolongbao places and noodles. And I have to say it's become my comfort food. So whenever I'm feeling a bit homesick, it's one of those, and a Qingdao beer will tide me over.
Excellent. Well, you've inspired me. I know where I'm going to go on the weekend now. Well, thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you soon in Shanghai, and of course staying in touch remotely through the next couple of months.
Thanks, Jack. Really great talking.
Pleasure.
Thanks. Bye-bye.